Get this boy a bib. He needs his mama.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Some years back, I was rescued from the island of Ponder Rock a mere hour after I butchered my sweet savior walrus in order to live.
Can you hang on a second?
Oh, red tagged. That could be bad.
Oh, Charlie Sheen.
Poor guy.
I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs. Welcome back.
Welcome to you.
It's been
you.
Like
it's
10 years or something like that.
Kind of a month.
We're not going to catch up on everything. You can tell because we're sort of being a little chatty.
We're not talking
as
about
opposed
movies
to saying,
yet.
Yeah, jumping right into it. But then perhaps we should jump right into it.
Shall we?
What do you think?
I think I would love nothing more in this moment in this life than to have you introduce the first film.
Oh, well, thank you so very much. Well, then, as if you didn't know, there's a sequel coming out. It's the second volume, I use that term intentionally, of a very popular film. And if you weren't one of the, 200 million people that went to see it recently, a whole group of people are trying to save the universe and everything that's inside of it, from big hairy bugs and stuff like that, and one guy that happens to be a living planet. Watch out, because we're going to have to get some help from the Guardians of the Galaxy. So clearly they created some phenomenally fun characters with the first one. I never read any of these comic books. I'm a big Marvel fan, but never read Guardians of the Galaxy. So when the first one came out, a couple years ago, it was brand new and fresh. And what a great movie that one was. Loads of fun, terrific music, just firing on all cylinders. So this one, I'm sure, made probably $250 million domestic. Just went through the roof. I tried to stay away from learning, as I know you do too, too much about it. I knew Kurt Russell is in it, and he plays an important character. I won't say too much if people haven't seen it, and he's a lot of fun. But I was really disappointed in this. I was, again, expecting, I'd read great reviews. I mean, everything I was hearing about it was, wow, this is not only a terrific movie, but it's really funny and great music and everything. And unfortunately, and I don't think I was going in expecting too much. I can consciously be aware I expected too much from this movie, so that's my fault. I just didn't think that this had the magic. I thought it worked too hard to push. It was all about family. Every single character involved in this film, it's about family, 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 family. And that's great, but I didn't think the overall arc of the threat was as interesting. We meet a new race of golden people that are clearly going to be around for a while. They were sort of fun, but for some reason I thought this tried way too hard for funny moments that, in my opinion, kind of fell a little bit flat. Ultimately, on a scale of 0 to 10, I gave Guardians a 5. Certainly, it had some laugh out loud moments, and there was fun. It's pretty long. It's over 2 hours long. So in the long run, it's going to make $8 bazillion. Clearly, we're looking at sequel after sequel, which is fine. I'm looking forward to it. But I was disappointed in this one.
Get your pencils and papers out, kids. I disagree.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this a lot. Not disagree. My opinion is divergent, to quote a film series that I didn't like.
Yeah, okay, good.
From
don't
yours.
Go there.
Detergent, Ivory Snow Presents. I had a really good time with this.
Okay.
And I had heard from others that there was a friend of mine who I was hanging out with this weekend said he thought that there was too much in this movie. Like every character has a full arc, and there's too much of that pesky character development. So I had that in my head going in, but that didn't bother me. The length never bothered me, and I look at running times because I want to see so much in life, and I have to see so much in life. When I look at a film that should be light, frivolous entertainment, and it's 2.5 hours, I'm always like, wouldn't 90 minutes be better? But the length never bothered me. I was with it the whole time. I guess if I was critical, I would say this isn't as much fun or as good as the first one, but I laughed a lot. It was really gorgeous to look at. I saw it on a screen that I was disappointed with the size of when I walked into the theaters.
Okay.
So I can imagine on a much bigger screen how much more visually splendiferous it might be. I did not see it in 3D, but I could see where 3D would have been utilized well in the film. I think during a lot of the action sequences, it probably wouldn't have been because it's just cut like a normal movie is. But when you're in new environments and in space, there are moments where you could tell they were leaving it there for the 3D.
Right. Don't you find that intrusive, though, if you're watching it in 2D, which I did? There are moments, we're going through a bunch of bubbles and they pop bubbles. Well, what's the point? That's obviously a 3D gimmick.
It doesn't bother me, really. I mean, I was only disappointed in that I wish I was seeing that in 3D,
Okay.
but it doesn't really take me out of it so much as it, take this pen.
Right, okay,
in the bad 3D movies, like in the old Stooges shorts, it's like, I have a wrench. I'm sorry.
Right.
So it was great to see the gang again. It was great to see some new faces, some new old faces, some new old faces.
Well, there were some fun cameos.
Yeah, some fun cameos. One of which I was like, wow. He's kind of a big name star from the past, and he's not in this very much. But then toward the end, you're like, oh, they're setting it up for him to be a much bigger part in the second film, including Michelle Yeoh at the end of the movie. I'm like, damn, Michelle Yeoh, why is she only like a silent cameo? And then there's, okay, stay through the credits. Stay through the very end of the credits. There are, I believe, 5 during the credits sequences. Also, the credits in this film are fun and funny. They do things with the titling. They do things with the images off to the side. The music is great. It continues all the way to the end of the credits. So it's really a nice party atmosphere as the credits roll, I thought. Our Star-Lord character has a major story arc and resolution in this film that was interesting, and elements of which I did not see coming. And when they were revealed, it was like, oh, that's kind of dark. And there was a moment though where now I don't remember all the character names.
Right.
Where the Zoe Saldana character they're in a place and he says, this is great, this is everything I've ever wanted, and she's like, there's something that's not right here. I could swear to God that came from another movie that I saw. It's probably been done a million times, but it was reminding me of something and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, where some character has met his resolution in his happy place, and I don't want to say any more about it than that because it'll be giving things away.
I don't mean to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
Because I did enjoy Guardians, and I think as spectacular as it was big screen, I think I'm going to enjoy it more on video because it's maybe a bit more intimate. But when we spend half an hour in a 2.5 hour film, for want of a better term, without conflict, everything's great for Star Wars. Aren't you just waiting for half an hour? What's wrong with this picture? I just was waiting for that shoe to drop.
To a degree, I guess it starts to build that.
Last thing too.
Yes.
And again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, and that isn't my intention, because I didn't hate this movie by any means. I was disappointed in some of the effects. I thought a few of the effects were especially toward the end. We see Rocket. There's a close-up of Rocket in foreground, and then Star-Lord's in the background, and Rocket looks like this poorly drawn 2D.
Oh, that didn't occur to me.
Okay, so and maybe it was the projection, but
we were talking before we started talking for you. There is an effect that opens this film, which is a digital youthening of a character you see later in the film.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's the best I've ever seen that done.
Holy cow, yeah.
It was done with one of the X-Men films where you had our 2 oldest characters.
Well, and the Tron, the second
and Tron Legacy, and that looked weird.
Yeah.
But in this movie, I kept looking with a really critical eye because I saw that that's what they were doing, and I'm like, that's pretty damn convincing.
When the character first came, when he's driving, there's a character driving, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that who I think it is? It sure is, but wait a minute. Yeah, so keep your eye out for that. That was mind-boggling.
So you're right. It's going to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
I think I would say if you like the first one, you will like this one.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's pretty close to being fine for kids. I mean, there's some sexual stuff, but it's mostly alluded to.
Yeah.
There's no nudity. There's no really explicit gore that's not a CGI monster.
Right.
There's no profanity that I even recall.
Yeah.
They go out of the way to not say the F word at one point in the movie, which I thought was a noble choice. So I really had a great time with this. I would sit through this again and
go buy stock in Baby Groot dolls because you're going to make $1 bazillion on Baby Groot.
And they used an ELO song. These movies use music that I love, so that wins my heart too. May I introduce a film I haven't seen?
It's your turn.
Great. I will ignorantly. I will be the ignorami in this situation. I probably would be anyway. So we have a woman shattered by her past? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I didn't see the film. But she goes to do a new job when everything seems peachy. It seems both hunky and dory. It possibly hoity and perhaps toity. And only to find out that all is not the candy-colored lip gloss that she thought it was. For she is involved in the circle.
Oh, out he goes. Sorry. Cut him off a little.
So
Sorry, Tom.
We present that to you as informational because it's not playing locally.
Not playing anywhere around here.
It was playing somewhere I was this weekend, but I only had time to see one film. And sorry, Circle, it's going to be Guardians.
I'm not driving that far, so...
in 6.5 hours?
But since it's not available, I really want to see it. So, but, I mean, Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, come on, it can't be too bad. It does look kind of like The Firm, a new version of The Firm, which I liked a lot anyway, but... Anyway.
So there is one other larger-than-life film that came out.
Huger than life, humongouser than the world can possibly be. No, I'm not talking just about Vin Diesel and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's muscles. But you do see a lot of those in there, as well as everybody else. You find out what it's like down in Cuba to be racing cars, and then you drive all around the world and save all of society and the world from evil, nefarious Charlize Theron. You also find out what exactly goes on in The Fate of the Furious.
Simply name your favorite brand. Awesome ice cream, so good and helpful too.
And we're back. Same old thing. I can't keep track. I think this is the 8th one. Hence
Yes.
The Fury, all that kind of stuff.
The Fate.
Of the Furious. I can't keep track of them all. I know all the characters, and I have some sort of a understanding of all of their backgrounds, but basically it's everybody back together. Jason Statham, whom I've learned to really like, starting with some of these, and he was the mechanic, but then where I really started liking him was when he did a comedic turn in Spy. And I thought, as I recall, you weren't crazy about that movie, but I liked it with Melissa McCarthy and Statham. He steals the show in this, which is hard to do with these megastars, especially The Rock and Vin Diesel. This is basically, it's a convoluted reason for Kurt Russell, who is some black ops government super spy, who gets all of them together because Charlize Theron has stolen the God's Eye, which is this computer program that can locate somehow anybody in the world. I don't know how.
Was it on a flash drive?
Yes, it was.
That's the new thing in movies now. It's always who's got the flash drive.
Yeah, they just steal that. Yeah. But so she's got that, and then she has Vin Diesel. This isn't giving too much away. She blackmails Vin Diesel somehow. We don't quite know how until the movie really progresses. But into stealing an EMP, and so he detonates the EMP in a previous Soviet area, and steals a nuclear sub. So Charlize Theron, it's just so over the top.
Does he pop a wheelie with a sub?
He doesn't yet, but she's driving that. She's great. She's just like, you just despise her. And while I wasn't crazy about her and the Huntsman or whatever the movie was where she's this evil, she just chews the scenery in a positive way in this one. So in the long run, sure, this is no great shakes. It probably made $1 bazillion. It's been out for a while. But it brings back the same old characters, and it gives you the same old thing. It's long. It's over 2 hours long. So I got a little tired of it wearing out. But I do think, because you asked me while the trailer was playing, I do think the vast majority of the stunts were not effects, that they were, practical, driving cars and smashing up a lot of cars. There's some really great choreographed, massive car movements and stuff like this. So I think if it's what you see is what you get. If you liked it, which is what I was looking for, I had a good time with it.
I've never liked any of these movies because they're dumb.
Yep.
And they're a bunch of guys just strutting around and ragging on each other in not comedic lines. But mostly it's because you can't see what the hell's going on in the action. And like the first movie, when I saw it, they were doing these theoretically exciting things, but I'm like, that's a cartoon car. I don't care.
Right.
It's fake. Maybe they've moved on to practical more. Maybe they always were practical. I know the last time I saw one of these, they were ranting and raving about how great the practical effects, the fact that they did it for real, but the way they shot and cut it, it was like you couldn't see anything that was going on. So I'm ready to jump on board this series at the point they start showing me the action, and I just want to see cars blowing up. I want to see cars fly. I don't care what the plot is, honestly.
Right.
But I was actually, as much as I hate these, and I see another one, I roll my eyes until my head aches. I'm like, maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll please me this time. I didn't see this one yet. I kind of want to because I do want a series of car movies that I like.
Right.
And maybe I'll hop on board with episode 8 or 9 and ride to the end of the
I'm
ground.
pretty cognizant of your concern about how fights are shot, but I tend to think more that like fist fights and things like that. Statham has a great bit. Again, he steals the scenes with a lot of that, some fights in there, and I don't recall being bothered by that. So maybe this is one you should kind of pick up.
I will see it at a budget matinee at my earliest convenience, which might be 2025. So that's all that we saw theatrically that we're going to tell you about this week. In the interest of moving along to trying to play a little bit of catch up, we will now move on to that which is available on the home video platform for the device of your choice. First up being a new film, which is a continuation of an older series of films, which is based on a series of Japanese films. But this is really based on the American films about what are you going to do when you watch a video and then your phone rings and says, 7 days. Well, if you're the people in this movie, you will hope to criminy that you can avoid the terror of rings.
Beginning point for us was the Bullseye logo, which worked with rubies, sapphires, and diamonds.
Looks like Final Destination,
Yes,
actually.
sort of.
So I, a fan of the Japanese Ring films, more or less. The original's great, the sequels came and went. The American sequel, the American Ring remake done by Gore Verbinski was really good.
I agree.
Never saw the second one, and I haven't been up to date. We reviewed a Japanese Ring sequel a couple of years ago, Samsara, I think it was called, where they updated the technology where it's like now it's a viral video, which is what this movie does.
Right.
Not that this is a remake of that. So this had got a theatrical release briefly. I forgot it existed until you told me it was available to watch late last night, which may be an explanation for my incoherence today. And I didn't really like it that much.
Okay.
It is nicely shot when it wants to. When it wants to look good, it does. But too often it's just a series of close-ups and it's really dark. And it's the same plot. I mean, you could say it's a sequel. You could say it's a remake. It's definitely a reboot. It's trying to get another series going. It is so ham-fisted and obvious at the end of the movie where it's like, you ain't seen nothing yet. And a lot of jump scares, some creepy imagery here and there, some imagery that in moments that did remind me of the Final Destination films. But overall, I just thought it was really silly where they're trying to investigate and find out. Whenever you take something that's mysterious and creepy like Phantasm and you try to figure out what's behind it all and explain what's behind it all, it tends to lose a lot of its magic to me. So the actors were okay. You have Johnny Galecki, I believe it was, as the college professor. He was quite good. The two leads were kind of wishy-washy, pretty people. And I just, it was about 100 minutes long, I guess.
Yeah.
And somewhere around an hour, I was like, oh, so this should be wrapping up pretty soon. And I looked and still have another 40
going.
minutes to go. So I didn't really care for this. I think this is probably fine for anybody who's not terribly demanding, who doesn't have a strong recollection of the other films, or probably teenagers actually would work great. Because it delivers creepy moments and scares and gruesome stuff. But for me, it just felt very common, I guess I would say.
I can understand all of that. I think you're right that the best audience for this would be people who haven't seen any of the others.
And this works. You don't ever have to have seen a Ring movie.
Right, you don't to see pretty much any of them because they kind of start from scratch. This one gave me what I wanted in creepy moments. The girl crawling out of stuff is just like
that always works.
You can't get away from that creepiness. It did, I think, look pretty interesting and it had decent moves. But what is a problem with, and not that I can separate all of the Ring movies in my mind, we've seen it so much. You're exactly right that nothing new here. So I think if you're a huge fan of these, if you just want a couple of creepy moments, it works perfectly well. But don't expect anything new from Rings.
Speaking of rings, this is perfect.
Yes?
Speaking of rings, the next film is about a substance which some rings are made out of.
That's true, quite possibly. Bryce Dallas Howard, not really starring in it, but she gets a little tired of Matthew McConaughey, her husband, going off with Edgar Ramirez to try to find their fame and fortune. Because all they want to do is go into the jungles of Indonesia, I think it is, and look for gold.
Coins purchased in quantities of 20 or more come in special tubes as offered by the government of South Africa.
Oh, and there it goes.
Based on a true story.
Yes.
Somewhat accurate. I'll probably mention this before. There's a website called History versus Hollywood that I always go to when I see anything that's based on a true story, because it breaks down, here's what everybody really looked like, here's what really happened versus what the movie said, and it's a really interesting way to find out the truth behind a film and see how much gets changed.
Assuming we can trust the website, but I figure we can.
They do research.
Right.
So this was an interesting flick, but it wasn't terribly compelling, if that makes any sense. The trailers make it look much more exciting. It looks like it's going to be another Wolf of Wall Street, and it's not.
Exactly, yeah.
Basically, McConaughey's this guy who works for basically the equivalent of a modern-day gold prospecting firm, and he meets up with this guy who has these theories that there might be a ton of gold in Indonesia, and they go and they find it, and
half the time McConaughey's asleep with sleeping sickness.
He's knocked
in a
out with
tent.
malaria for half the movie.
What the heck?
And he's not the sexy McConaughey unless you're looking for Paul Giamatti on a bad day as sexy. So it wasn't that great to me. It really only kind of got interesting toward the end when something unexpected happens, and then there's sort of an investigation. And now what do we do? But it was passable to me. It was sleeper, I guess what you might call this, but it wasn't anything that I would necessarily recommend to anybody unless they were really interested in the subject or a huge fan of McConaughey and wanting to see him overweight and balding.
You should just pull a mirror and switch over here and say the same thing again, because I basically completely agree. I like McConaughey a lot. Ramirez is, I think, a more intriguing, interesting character in this. But you're right. It's the last half hour or so when they have all this, and this isn't giving anything away, they have all this wealth, and the government comes after them, investors come after them, everybody's trying to take it away from them, and what happens? That's by far the most interesting thing. So I think I would have wished they'd followed kind of the Wolf of Wall Street area, because that's when it becomes much more interesting. McConaughey is good. For a friend of mine, and you may have heard this recently, said that anytime you pop in a Matthew McConaughey movie, all the girls want to see it because he's going to take his shirt off and go, "Oh, he's so gorgeous." This is one for the guys. Yeah. Oh, really? You think so? Here, watch this. Because he's pot-bellied and he's bald.
It makes you feel better about yourself when you watch this.
Right. So he's a real chameleon in this one. I like him a lot. This is a character piece that if you like him, if you like Ramirez, you're going to enjoy it. But otherwise, I thought they could have done a lot more with gold.
Speaking of gold.
Yes.
Speaking of Oscar gold, man. This next film we're about to discuss won a whole lot of them their Oscars, amongst other awards. Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling are together in a modern take on the classic Hollywood musical of young love, the search for fame, and all of the wonders to be found in La La Land. Hi.
And we're back again. Sorry.
I don't know if they heard me say your Amazon account
my
password
Amazon
out
account
loud.
information?
Yeah.
We'll play that back and try it again.
Yes.
Anyway, it's gold all over the place, won all sorts of stuff. I was not crazy about this in the theaters, basically because it got so much hype. It's a lot like, not that my family watches this, but in my opinion, it's a lot like Hamilton. Everybody in the world loves Hamilton, so I go into it with a chip on my shoulder saying, impress me then. The two of them are fun. They have decent chemistry together. I love the dancing bits. I didn't think this didn't knock my socks off, was the thing, and I went in expecting that. I like this a lot more on video. I don't think it doesn't have the vistas and everything that it require a big motion picture like, I mean, for instance, again, American in Paris, something like that. I want to see that on a big screen. This worked a lot better for me on home video. And so I bumped it up another point or two. The two of them I've always liked, and I like them a lot. Gosling I'm looking forward to in Blade Runner again, so he gets an extra point just for being in that. So in the long run, if you like the 40s studio kind of musicals and things like that, it takes an interesting, not twist at the end, but it doesn't follow the path that I was kind of expecting with it, so I respect that from it. So in the long run, on I guess third viewing, I thought La La Land was a notch up there. Was it worth Best Picture? I don't necessarily think so, but it was still pretty enjoyable.
I liked it a lot when I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
I had really high opinion of it, and I had heard the hype and all of that, but it worked for me in terms of, and it's the standard Hollywood story. It's a love letter to Hollywood loving itself. It's the self-love of Hollywood, and of old movie musicals. Just in terms of the young aspiring hopefuls who meet on their journey to the top and what happens. And it does take a more arguably realistic approach to how things resolve, but it does have some nice musical numbers. It's got a nice spirit about it. I like the way it's shot. It has some very lovely musical sequences in how it's shot. And Gosling just keeps again and again. It's easy as a dude, and I'd like to think of myself as a dude, to dismiss pretty boy actors who everybody loves because of how they look. But Gosling, man, he can do drama like nobody's business. The musical stuff he sells well. He can do comedy really well. So I'm up for anything he shows up in. He's badass. He was in The Nice Guys. So I mean, come on, Nice Guys.
So
If you haven't seen The Nice Guys,
he can do 5 other movies that would be awful, but he doesn't. So.
And if every third one is a Nice Guys sequel, that's okay. So yeah, I really like this a lot. The music, there's a song that has stuck in my head since I saw the film, and that not a lot of music does that now. So I would highly recommend it. It's a good date movie, obviously. It's a good. I just think it's a good movie. I liked it.
Good.
Is it the best picture of last year? No, that was The Nice Guys. But it was good.
Right.
So speaking of things that are nice.
Lots of nice. James McAvoy, you get a lot of him because you might get 100 or so of them because he's got some multiple personalities. And after he kidnaps a couple of girls and locks them away, all they want to do is split.
That's good.
Thank you. I thought that was a little twist on the thing. You thought I was going to make mention about McAvoy being a multiple personality, but no. I said split, which means get out of here. Okay, McAvoy knocked my socks off on this one. I just thought he was stunning. And is it the kind of thing that's going to get an Academy nod since it's basically horror? Probably not. I guess most of Shyamalan's main characters have to be bald because Bruce Willis was in Sixth Sense and all that. I don't know. Just struck me as that. You made the joke, and I'll let you make the joke about McAvoy when you say your bit. But I was really looking forward to this. I've been, after 10 or so failed attempts, I've been waiting for Shyamalan to finally come back and give me a movie that's worthy of his talent, or at least what I thought was his talent after The Sixth Sense. And I think this approaches it. There's some what I'll call logic moments that bother me. You've got these 3 girls who are trapped in there, and this crazy guy, this split personality guy, is keeping you captive, and so they'll try to beat him up, they'll do anything. There were moments that they showed us things, well, why don't you use this? And good, really well done movies, and normally, like The Sixth Sense did this, they'll answer that. This is why they don't, or we'll try it. And there were a few moments that they didn't. Ways that I saw that if it had been me, I would have tried to escape doing this or using this. Other than that, I think this is worth every penny you might pay to rent or purchase it because McAvoy, in my opinion, is just stunning. It's a tour de force of performance for him. And the rest of this is pretty creepy. As I recall, don't hold me to this, but I don't recall this as rated R for language. There's not overt violence or anything?
I think it might be. I seem to remember, if nothing else, for the tone.
The tone is certainly pretty grim, right?
The violence
Little
is
kids
more
certainly
of the beating variety.
Right. But boy, I just thought McAvoy was terrific, and again, how do we say we enjoy these things? I don't know, but I thought Split was really good.
We might actually be split on this one. I saw this in the theater. I went in knowing almost nothing about it. I had seen a trailer so long before it, I didn't really remember much about it. And some of McAvoy's characters, I started to grind on me. No,
personalities or,
that kind of
or characters?
The characters, or the personalities, let's say, started to wear on me after a while.
Okay.
And sometimes I felt like this is, the actor's dream is to play 10 characters in the same movie and do the most acting possible. It held interest, though, in terms of somebody being held captive and how do they get out thing and where's it all going to go. Where it ultimately goes, I thought was a little silly.
Okay, right.
And it ultimately ties into another Shyamalan film, which if you know and like that film, it's probably mind-blowing. And if you don't, you're like, why did that guy just give him why did that actor show up and give him a look, and what does that mean?
Right.
But I know most people who saw this really liked it a lot. So I will say, as far as my opinion goes, it's probably not worth a whole lot because I'm in the minority of finding this kind of overlong and tedious personally. Okay. But it was nice to see Betty Buckley in a film because I liked 8 is Enough when I was a kid. So speaking of 8 is Enough,
yes,
is how many restaurants in a chain
8 and 8
is enough, and how many billion have been served? Well, we riffle on back to the beginning of the history of the McDonald's Corporation, and we delve into the psyche and methods of the madness of Ray Kroc, the man who was considered by many to be The Founder. So I didn't see it, but I really want to.
Oh, really? You hadn't?
I
Really?
have not seen it.
It's again, this is a character-driven piece with Michael Keaton, who is a terrific actor. It's certainly a darker, grimmer look at the story behind, or at least behind Ray Kroc. It's not complimentary by any means for Kroc's personality. He basically steals the McDonald's Corporation from these two guys who came up with a terrific idea and really wanted to. Now Kroc was a brilliant entrepreneur and marketer, and that's certainly what this shows. So if you're interested in the history of it, if you're interested in McDonald's, if you want to see just a strong performance from Keaton, I thought this was interesting and pretty compelling. Do you enjoy it? It's not one of these movies that you enjoy, but I thought everything worked pretty well together, and I ended up liking The Founder.
Speaking of The Founder,
yes,
I got nothing more to say. I didn't see it. Speaking of The Founder, here's a new film that is available now on video on demand and perhaps in other formats. Noomi Rapace stars as a woman who is kidnapped and wakes up in a bizarre facility where she is put through various trials and tribulations until it may or may not lead to a rupture.
Challenge. It gives you a customized plan using products with clinically proven ingredients that work to fight acne.
Well, I really wanted to see this, but I didn't get a chance to.
I did.
Not sure. Okay.
You may get your chance yet.
I'd love to.
If I can find the link.
Okay.
So this is interesting, as that trailer may have indicated. When I was sent the film to possibly review, and I watched the trailer, I was like, boy, I don't know, this might be a little too much, but it's not. When it started off, basically Noomi Rapace is a regular woman, and she gets kidnapped, and she wakes up in this weird underground facility, and she's put through all these weird semi-torture kind of things. And is it real? Is it not? Who are these people? Why are they doing it? Is she going to manage to escape? Is there anybody else there? Elements of films we've seen are
right,
in
you'd
this.
mentioned beforehand it looked a lot like Saw.
Well, when it started, I'm like, oh, if this is going to be just another Saw thing, I'm not too interested. But it wasn't. It was more than that. And it was great in that it was weird, and when a question would get answered, a new question would pop up. And then Peter Stormare shows up, and if he shows up, it's just going to get weird and skeevy just by him walking through the door. And Michael Chiklis is in it, so it's got a good cast, not a large cast, a lot of good use of color. It's not too gross, but it is weird. And I just held my interest the whole time. It was nicely shot. When the deal is kind of revealed at the end, you're just like, what? In a good way. Like, I never saw that coming out of this. So I liked Rupture. I thought it was cool. I think it's good to seek out, if you like strange movies, if you have a patience or if you have a stomach for strange and uncomfortable situations. It's kind of like a fear, if they made Fear Factor the movie, you could slap that on this in a way. Okay. But and Noomi Rapace is always really strong, so I almost want to say if her name's attached to it, it's worth looking into, because I can't think of anything of hers I've seen that I didn't think was good, at least of what I've seen. So I would recommend Rupture personally.
Cool.
Should I introduce the final film?
You probably should, because again, I didn't get a chance to see that either.
Okay,
sorry.
It wasn't the man's fault. So, you say you're a Korean gentleman. For the purposes of what I'm doing, let's say you're a Korean gentleman.
I'm a Korean gentleman.
He's a Korean gentleman, and so are you. Driving home from work one day with a birthday cake for your daughter in the back seat. You're just going through this hole in a mountain that cars pass through, and it caves in on you, and that really sucks. This is a film about what one man does with a community behind him in order to survive inside the tunnel.
정수, 어머 얘네.
This is such a hold your breath movie.
Looks intense, yeah.
It's an edge of your seat. At home, we have something we refer to as the F That Film Festival. And it's like when you watch a movie and you're like, well, I'm never going to do that. And not that driving through the tunnel, the man had any choice in the matter, but he's driving through a tunnel, it collapses on him. He is trapped in like an area with some air, and he's got a little bit of sustenance in his car. And it is him trying to communicate with the outside world to let them know he's alive. And this huge team of government emergency responders who are outside trying to get the guy out, and maybe other survivors if they're in there. And it's the process of them doing that, what this guy goes through to keep his sanity and maintain life when you're trapped under a mountain, literally. And it was compelling all the way through. It was not terribly long, if I recall.
Okay.
It's in Korean with English subtitles. It's Well Go USA put this out on DVD, who I love because they put out so much cool Asian cinema that you wouldn't see otherwise here. I believe they always have an English dub track on their films, or they usually do. So I think this had that, and it had a behind-the-scenes featurette. But really, at its core, is the movie. And I've seen there was a Stallone film, Daylight, which was kind of lame. There was a TV movie from the 70s called Trapped that was pretty good, about people trapped in a subway. I think it was a subway collapse.
Nicolas Cage was in something based on 9/11 too, where the towers fall, and I forget what that was.
I don't remember what
Similar
that was.
To it,
but yeah, so and it's basically a relatively small cast, but it does get into some humor with bureaucracy and politicians wanting to make sure they're there if anything happens that's positive and they get their picture taken.
Right.
And so there's some really laugh out loud moments involving that. But overall, it's just a very solid drama thriller that I would highly recommend. I really liked it a lot.
Great.
Put it into the category I was saying. You were saying, when's the American remake coming?
Right.
Which you totally could, because it's such a simple premise. Just plug an American into this, and I think it should be Ryan Reynolds, so he can work on a Guy in a Box trilogy.
Right.
Because you had Buried, which was
That'll
great.
work, right.
And Stephen Dorff was in what was it called? Break or something like that. He was in the Guy in a Trunk movie, which was also really good.
Right,
Trunk of a car. And this is a guy trapped, in a mountain. So that's all we have to discuss that we have watched, that we have planned to discuss today.
Yep.
Do you have any news, views, or words of wisdom for the folks at home?
Not really.
Yeah, me either. I was up late last night watching Rings, and boy, was it worth it. So I guess we will let them go about their daily lives.
Yes, they must. They can sit here waiting for the next show.
I would recommend it. Next week we'll be talking about even more films.
Yes.
Honestly, the backlog of discs that we haven't watched yet for the show is like this tall, and that's in skinny cases. So I'm kind of hoping to slide a few more weird ones in at the end of next week's show. So until then, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are the Cinemaniacs.